Hi, this is Andy, K4GKP, and welcome to the Ham Whisperer and the first lesson in the General Class Operator Element 3 exam to get your General Class Amateur Radio license. Now, this course is set up almost exactly like the Technician Class course that I did, in that the questions are kind of based on repetition. I give an explanation of the answers, and there's a quiz at the end, which I encourage that you take so that you basically get more repetition and familiarize yourself with the questions. Now, this course is not designed to make you the burning bush of amateur radio. It's to get you past the general class exam so you can go ahead and get experience on your own. Now, the general class exam is broken down almost exactly like the technician class exam, in that there's basically 10 sub-elements, and each one of those sub-elements have little groups that are associated with them, and generally one question will come from each group. Now, the way I'm breaking the lessons down is I'm doing a lesson per group. So generally, every lesson that I give, there'll be one question from that lesson on the exam. But other than that, it's almost exactly like, format-wise, the technician exam. In this first lesson, we're going to be going over the G1A questions from the question pool, which go over general class control operator frequency privileges and primary and secondary allocations. There's a lot of memorization along with this lesson for the exam. What I've done is on the website, I've broken down exactly the frequencies and everything you need to memorize so you're not overworking to pass the exam. However, knowing the frequencies and knowing the privileges is very important so you don't violate any FCC rules. All right, let's get started with the first question. On which of the following bands is a general class license holder granted all amateur frequency privileges? So basically the whole spectrum. And the answer is 160, 30, 17, 12, and 10 meters. And this is one of those memorization questions I said I'll have broken down on the website. The big thing to note here is that general class license holders have a lot of HF frequency privileges, which gives you basically worldwide and a lot of DX opportunities. So it's a pretty good deal. On which of the following bands is phone operation prohibited? All right, the answer is 30 meters. And 30 meters is the only thing allowed on 30 meters is RTTY, data, and Morse code. And this is another one to memorize, but 30 meters is pretty much just radio teletype data and Morse code. And if you can remember that, you'll be fine. On which of the following bands is image transmission prohibited? And that's 30 meters. And image is not RTTY or data, and it's another one of those things you just got to remember. Which amateur band restricts communication to specific channels using only USB voice and prohibits all other modes including CW and data? And the answer to this is 60 meters. And 60 meters is kind of a new addition to amateur radio. It works kind of like CB, where there's channels that you're allowed to use, and there's certain restrictions on those channels. And CW, which is usually allowed on all bands, is not allowed on 60 meters. So 60 meters is the answer. Which of the following frequencies is in the general class portion of the 40 meter band? The answer is 7.250 for the possible answers on the exam. Now, the general class privileges for 40 meter band extends from, it's broken into two parts, and extends from 7.025 to 7.125 megahertz, and then 7.175 to 7.3 megahertz. The other possible answers on the exam aren't even in the permitted amateur frequencies. So this is one of those memorization questions you just gotta know. Which of the following frequencies is in the 12 meter band? The answer on the exam of the possible answers is 24.94 megahertz, and 12 meters is the 24 megahertz band, and the general privileges fall between 24.890 and 24.990 megahertz. 24.940 megahertz is the only possible 24 megahertz answer. So if you remember, 12 times 2 is 24. 24 megahertz, you'll get the answer correct. Which of the following frequencies is within the general class portion of the 75 meter phone band? And the answer is 3900 kilohertz or 3.9 megahertz. There is another answer that is in the 80-75 meter band, and the general class operators do not have privileges on that frequency. So another memorization question. Like I said, I'll have the answers broken down on the website. Which of the following frequencies is within the general class portion of the 20 meter phone band? And the answer on the exam is 14,305 kilohertz or 14.305 megahertz, but the answer is in kilohertz. This is tricky because all the possible answers fall within the 14 megahertz range, and three are within the amateur privileges. So this is another one you have to memorize. Only one is in the general class privileges, though, and like I said, it's a memorization question. Which of the following frequencies is within the general class portion of the 80 meter band? The answer on the exam, the possible answers, is 3,560 kilohertz, and this one is in the CW portion of the 80 meter band, and another memorization one. Which of the following frequencies is within the general class portion of the 15 meter band? The answer on the exam is 21,300 kilohertz, and it's another one. Which of the following frequencies is available to a control operator holding a general class license? All right, the general 10 meter privileges covers from 28 megahertz to 29.7 megahertz. And on the exam, the frequencies given fall all within that spectrum. So this is an all of the above question. When a general class licensee is not permitted to use the entire voice portion of a particular band, which portion of the voice segment is generally available to them? Well, the answer is the upper end, and this is sort of a weird question. Essentially what they're saying that if the privileges on a particular band for general class operator are broken up, so there's a gap between in the spectrum, the voice privileges will generally fall on the higher end of the spectrum, so the higher frequency. So if you look at a band spectrum or like the ARRL band chart, you'll notice that the higher frequencies, generally the voice privileges fall within them, and that's what they're trying to get at this question. Which amateur band is shared with the Citizens radio service? And the answer is none. We have absolutely nothing to do with CB or the family band or any other citizen radio service. So amateur radio has nothing to do with Citizens radio service. Which of the following applies when the FCC rules designate the amateur service as a secondary user and another service as a primary user on a band? Now, the answer is the amateur stations are allowed to use the frequency band only if they do not cause harmful interference to primary users. And some bands are shared with other types of radio services, and if the FCC has designated the other service as a primary user, you should avoid interfering with that primary transmission. Now, sometimes there's broadcast bands on 40 meters and stuff like that we're not supposed to interfere with, and basically what it comes down is just be a polite user, but also know that there are bands out there that you're not allowed to interfere with, and you can get in trouble if you do. What must you do if, when operating on either 30 or 60 meter bands, a station in the primary service interferes with your contact? Well, what you need to do is stop transmitting at once and or move to a clear frequency. Now, a primary service has priority, so you got to give them the right of way. Which of the following operating restrictions applies to amateur radio stations as a secondary service in the second meter band? Well, the answer is they must not cause harmful interference to stations operating in other radio services. So there's a theme here: don't interfere with a primary station or a primary service. And that ends the G1A review. The quiz will be in part 2 of the G1A lesson, which you can find at www.hamwhisper.com, or if you have trouble finding it on the YouTube channel. So take a break, get a piece of paper and a pencil, and get ready for the quiz. I'll see you in part 2.